fellow alumni and friends. Welcome to the 44th edition AIM Alumni Association of India and FAME webinar. In the last 4 decades, if any organization has grown exponentially in the Indian context and has evoked a range of emotions from all of us, it has to be Reliance Industries Limited. We have heard and read a lot about Reliance from various media. Today, your association offers you a unique ringside view from an alumnus who has spent 23 years of his working life with the group and is presently working in the chairman's office. Nilesh Modi, MM 2008, will help us understand what it takes to creating winning strategies and leadership in a successful conglomerate. And to facilitate the same, we have none other than our ace alumnus interviewer, Ms. Asawari Desai Salvi, MBM 95 from Qatar, for giving her lunch and joining us. Without further ado, over to you, Asa.
Thanks, Nikhil, for the introduction. And it is my intense pleasure to have this opportunity to interact with Nilesh and get his insights into some of his key learnings into his 2 decades journey, starting from being a new recruit to the pivotal role that he currently holds with the organization. So, Nilesh, let's start. Let me start with the first question. You have worked across various businesses within the Reliance Group. Can you talk about any mega project that you've been associated with? Please share your perspective covering all the aspects, starting from business planning, strategy, project management, execution, risks, governance, funding over the entire project lifecycle. Thank you.
Sauri, first and foremost, I hope all of you and your family members are safe and healthy. I would also like to thank Nikhil and AI executive team for inviting me for this interactive session and providing me an opportunity to share my learnings. So coming to the question, Asauri, before going into a specific project, let us understand how Reliance of today has been built over the decades through sheer hard work, resilience, agility, and visionary leadership. So Reliance was also started as a startup by our founder, Chairman Shri Dhirubhai Ambani, in a similar setting to what we call as garage of startups today. He started from virtually nothing and built this empire. So all the key business verticals that are there today are all built as greenfield projects. None of them have been built. Almost 99.5% or maybe even more is been built through greenfield projects rather than through acquisitions. So this means that Reliance itself has never exited the startup mode right from its inception since 43 plus years old, 43 plus years. So by the time one mega project, I would say, is in execution, nearly 2 to 3 projects are always on the drawing board for going into the execution. Now, let's also understand that how do we decide on a particular business opportunity or what sort of businesses we enter from first principle perspective. So what we do is, as a group, we always solve a specific societal problem efficiently at scale in a cost-effective manner. So that's the principle that we always follow. And during the entire project life cycle, I think what we invest more is we invest more time at the planning stage itself, so that once the planning is effective, I think it flows into an flawless execution process. With the planning, what we do is we plan the whole. We always have a whole in mind. Then we break it down into smaller components and monitor the overall progress of the execution. I think over the period of time, the organization has also mastered the project management skills, and we always try to execute toughest and the biggest project in record time. Many a times, we ourselves are beating our own records that we have broken in the past, right? As a part of the planning process itself, we do assess the risk of the entire project, what could happen, or at least the known unknowns, and then we create mitigation strategies, and we do stay extremely agile during the entire course of the project. So now let me talk about a project which I was personally associated with. So it is an ethane import project that we executed. It was a multi-billion dollar project where I was closely involved in. So since we were already invested in US and we saw the opportunity of bringing ethane from US to India for feeding our petrochemical plants, actually which was actually rejected in US. So we saw that opportunity and we conceptualized the project. The project entails nearly 6 different moving parts, 6 different components of that project. And if it is not executed in a synchronized manner, then that's a big project risk associated with this type of project. So even during that time, I mean, where the vessels that can transport ethane from US to India were not existing at all. The kind of project that we were envisaging, it required mega, or at least I would say a grand scale vessels that can transport ethane at minus 90 degrees centigrade from US to India. So we were not into building vessels, we were not into building or owning ships, even though we were into a refining business and transporting a lot of crudes, but we were never into shipbuilding ever. So despite that, I think what we did is we studied that entire segment. We built 6 world's largest ethane carrier, which in fact even today are world's largest ethane carrier. And in a nutshell, if we have to see, it operates like a shuttle. They are carrying the ethane. They are taking the ethane or onboarding ethane from US and then downloading it in India and going back and getting ethane again. So we worked on this project end to end and executed in a matter of 2.5 years. The way when I look backwards, I think uh, what was the reason that we could execute this project and we could at least think a little bit more creatively here. So first, the way this particular project was the first in the world to execute at such a large scale. So I personally feel that we never had any legacy or any baggage or comparison to make. So one, because of that, we could think more creatively and beyond the rational boundaries of a particular industry. So this is how I personally feel, Asauri, that we could execute this project, and this was a project where I was personally involved. And when it comes to funding and monitoring this project, let me also tell you, I think when the project is defined and once it is approved, I think funding and all is assigned to a particular project. Thereafter, the onus is on the project manager and the project sponsors that how they are actually spending that money. Because if the money is not spent, then it gives a feel that probably the project is not progressing well. So even we take an alternate view about how the funding is done and how the money is spent on a particular project.
Thanks, Nilesh. We understand that Reliance has been investing a lot in many startups these days. Can you throw some light on the rationale behind some of these investments that you may have worked on closely?
Sure. So, like I mentioned earlier, that Reliance itself has being like a startup. So that being the case, I think we understand startups better in terms of their strengths and in terms of their needs. So there are various startups, maybe in India or maybe even globally, that have done a great work at an accelerated pace. So as a group, I think we are very much open to partnerships and collaborations with startups. And investment in startups to us makes a unique opportunity to pull the best of the two worlds. I would say one is the unconstrained thinking mindset and resources of a corporate like ours, and combined with the passionate team and agility for these startups. So investments are made mostly in the companies which are more strategic to us. And most of the companies where we have invested, they operate like a company within a company framework, so that they continue to maintain their agility and their passionate team working culture.
Thanks. Given that most of the key people in Reliance have been in the organization for a very long time, what is it in the Reliance ecosystem that breeds leaders and loyalty? How do you feel your loyalty to the organization has been paid?
Well, I feel Reliance is a unique organization in various ways. I think that's my perspective. I mean, the business and the projects that are executed here are world class and executed at different scale itself, right? So many a times working with or getting associated with such projects of this scale, are like a once in a lifetime opportunity for many people, or I would say many younger people like us, where I've personally got an opportunity to associate with such projects. As an organization, I think on an ongoing basis, we nurture talent and give them the opportunity to learn, to excel in their own area by empowering them with the right kind of skills and give them the power to execute. Leaders also within the organization walk the talk, I would say, which itself is an opportunity for various next generation team members to work with such leaders and learn from them. And leaders within the organization, I mean, the executive committee and many senior leaders within the organization also mentor younger leaders and create a breed of next generation leaders. So all in all, I feel there is a platform that exists within the organization that breeds and creates the leaders and inculcates loyalty towards organization. So let me give you an example of myself. Say I joined, like you mentioned, I joined as a young engineer within Reliance. I worked on robotics and that scale of project back then in 1998, which we now talk about robotics, the current world scenario, right? So I joined as a young engineer. I worked on various projects at the different sites across different sites. After a period of 8 to 9 years, I went to AIM. I pursued the program. Once I returned back to Reliance, I made a shift into a particular business stream. I worked in that particular role for different businesses, different projects. After a while, I got an opportunity to pursue Kellogg HKUST program, so I moved there. After that, or in fact, midway into that program, I moved into chairman's office. I worked on different projects within chairman's office. So I think over the last 2 decades, I personally have got opportunity to work on different projects, different businesses, different domains. I feel it's very rare as an organization, in the world, I would say, to provide such a platform to many people like me and many others who within Reliance who have got that opportunity. And during this period, I have got an opportunity to work and to learn from the finest leaders, including the chairman himself.
Great, thanks. So we observe that despite being such a large organization, most of your operations are India-based. What is the reason? Any particular reason for this?
Well, firstly, we do have some operations outside India, so that at least the perspective is corrected. We do have some plants in Malaysia. We do have some businesses outside. Nevertheless, yes, a lot of operations are concentrated in India. Mainly the assets are in India, but we are truly a global organization. When we consider from a business perspective, so we are doing business across various countries. We do have representative offices across different countries. We do have trading offices as far as refineries concerned across different countries like London, US, and many other places, Singapore and all. So we do have positions across different countries. So it's a truly, I would say, a global organization. Uh, India itself, I would say, presents a vast opportunity, and it actually makes more sense to be focused in India itself, right? So the kind of opportunity that India is also throwing, I think India is on the global map for everyone to invest in. So then, since we take ourselves pride in knowing India better, why should we look at elsewhere? So that's one way of looking at it. Second is we ourselves have a very strong belief that what is good for India is good for Reliance. So I think as far as the journey continues and it is a win-win combination for India and Reliance, I think there's no point in looking elsewhere.
Great. Has your organization experienced any failures? If yes, how are they handled?
Okay, so I think the way to look at it, Asawari, is that what the world sees today is success, right? And that's the ultimate outcome. I would say, like any other organization, we might have also faced some intermediate setbacks as far as some businesses or some projects are concerned. But the best part is that how did we respond to that, which is more important, right? So we did not stop there, and rather than getting bogged down, with some of the past decisions, that who made it, why it was made, under what circumstances it has made, who is the cause of the failure, or what it would have been, what should have been thought at that point in time, etc., etc. Many thoughts come when such analysis happen, right? But what we do is typically we quickly learn from it and chart out the new course or a new road ahead in terms of action, and ensure that the ultimate objective is achieved. So that's the reason that we all see the success. I mean, there might be intermediate setbacks that might have been achieved, always we might have experienced. So I think on the whole, when at least I see it, the way I see it is the perseverance and the agility with which the organization has responded to such intermediate setbacks is the key differentiator as far as we are concerned.
Okay, great. So, what was the impact of COVID on the various plants and global operations? How did the group cope up and manage a crisis like this?
See, I think as far as COVID is concerned, first of all, let me also tell you before I venture into COVID that as far as all the businesses of Reliance are concerned, most of our businesses are essential services. So hence, most of our sites and plants were required to be kept operational to keep serving the country. And as far as COVID is concerned, I don't think any company's risk management, whether you consider Reliance or any other global company, might have envisaged something like this or factored it in their own risk management strategies. But having said that, like I have been saying earlier also, like I said, we are agile and thus we are nimble enough to respond to ensure the business continuity. So what we did just before lockdowns and all started, and when we kept on hearing and learning about COVID when it struck China and other places. So much before the crisis hit us, we started planning on typically on three main fronts. First, to ensure that how we can ensure the business continuity so that we can keep serving the requirements of the country and the businesses. Second, we worked on ensuring the safety and the well-being of all our employees and their families, because this is a critical human capital that makes everything going, right? So the focus on that was very important. And third, our team also worked on providing the support to society and country at large, so that we are all prepared on what sort of support that might be required. So those apprehensions or at least to apprehend those things and be ready with those aspects was something that we worked on. I think teams, the way Reliance typically works, we moved into or we created a war room or PMO. So we call it as a project management office much before the lockdown. Eventually, even today, such war rooms are operational, but more of like a virtual control room. First thing we did was to establish the safety protocol for all our employees and who were required to work from office. We also knew probably there could be a scenario, maybe if it aggravates and we may have to have work from a home model as well. So we also started preparing the essential infrastructure so that all the employees who have to work remotely can also continue to support the staff who are working from office. We started augmenting some sort of medical infrastructure as well in terms of creating COVID care centers, isolation wards within some of our facilities. Although we never knew whether it was required to be used or it will be used ever or not. But we started to prepare for any of such eventualities as well. I'm not sure whether many of you are aware, but as a part of our group, we do have Reliance Life Science, and there we have a molecular diagnostic lab, which does a higher end diagnostic testing. So they also swiftly moved and started RT-PCR and antibodies testing. So RT-PCR is the gold standard testing for COVID. We all know that, right? On the whole, on the health and the safety front, what we did different was we focused a little bit more on digital, being a enabler of digital for the country, I would say. We focused ourselves on digital. We created a COVID platform, and so that we can monitor health and wellness of every single employees and their family members, monitor the medical supplies across different sites, different places, medical infrastructure utilization. In a way, just to give you an example, give you a perspective, the way Reliance is spread out today, for us, it's like mini India to manage. So we have to be like managing like a government of our own people. So it's like a mini India that we have to manage when it comes to COVID. As a part of the platform, we had built a symptom checker, which is not only for our own employee, but it is also open to many outside, and millions of people are taking it. But our own within our own ecosystem, nearly 1 million people, employees as well as their family members, are taking that symptom checker even on a daily basis. Even today, there is a full compliance. If even if I miss it on Sunday, or due to any reason, I get a mail next day that you missed it from my HRBP. So that stringent protocol we have as far as the symptom checker is concerned. It is equally important. The reason is that it gives early warnings, and based on that early warnings, we can check if there is any medical attention required for any of our employees, and they are provided virtual consultation. We have the doctors, dedicated doctors team, and the medical team who are working and supporting this effort. Now, on the Reliance Foundation front, also, most of the COVID warriors are doing exemplary duties. But what we have also done here in Mumbai is our team, in partnership with BMC, has set up the India's first COVID-only hospital. In fact, that was set up just in a matter of 2 weeks, and I'm happy. At least there are so many people who are getting the benefit out of that hospital. Apart from that, foundation also worked under the leadership of our chairperson, and they have created a program which was a Mission Anna Seva, that as of now has provided meals and ration to nearly 5 crore people, which are mostly from the marginalized communities and frontline workers. I think there are a lot of other things as well we did, Savri, on production of masks, PPEs, free fuel for emergency vehicle. I mean, various other things. But typically, the way we respond is, as an organization, the way we have done is leveraged on the capabilities across the group and started responding to unprecedented crisis, which was ever seen in India. I would say maybe even for the world, or even humanity has ever seen it.
Thanks, Nilesh. So, continuing with the same thought process, what is the importance of CSR to your organization and to you personally?
I think CSR is an integral part of all our activities, I would say. And like I shared earlier, most of our businesses also are designed and created while keeping the societal value in mind. Reliance is always on the forefront during the need of the hour, may it be any natural disaster or pandemic, or any specific structured program like the foundation executes. May it be rural development, education, healthcare, grassroots sports, etc., etc. Personally, I feel I have also got an opportunity to work on some of these activities related to Reliance Foundation. So I personally feel that at least I got that such opportunities, and I feel blessed for that. In fact, my personal view about CSR is that somewhat like CSR, I think each one of us should think of having PSR. I would say personal social responsibility. And I think if that happens, then every individual is doing their own bit and supporting the right cause, and then we can create a world a much better place to live. Right?
Thank you. So, which aspect of Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani's legacy still influences the organization? Did you get a chance to interact with him?
Well, I did not get a chance to interact with him. Of course, I worked on a project where he was there to do the opening of that particular project. And whether I would say fortunately or unfortunately, that day my engagement day was there, so I missed that opportunity. So I actually I got engaged on that day, not an engagement day. I got engaged on that day, so I missed that opportunity. So that's one part of it. Second is I think as Relianceian, and I personally believe we all are inheritors of his of Shri Dhirubhai Ambani's principle. As whatever he has said, I think are very valuable to us, even as an organization we follow today. think some of his sayings at that point in time were like, think big, think fast, think ahead, ideas are no one's monopoly. So it's very clear, if you don't act fast, I think someone else is anyway going to do it. No one is, world is not waiting for you, right? He used to also say, between my past, the present and future, there is only one common factor: relationship and trust. And this is the foundation of our growth. I think this is very critical. Many of the cases I can cite, there are so many projects, so many areas I can think of, where there were so many partners who might have associated with the first project, and the similar project happening second time, there are same partner and the same relationship goes on and on, and it builds further, and the partnership ecosystem that has been developed continues to grow. Uh, uh, One more thing he used to say, which I distinctly remember, is that pursue your goals even in the face of difficulties, and convert adversities into opportunities. I think it is very relevant in the current parlance of pandemic and all that the world is seeing. And I think it's not only about Reliance. Many companies in the country are also looking from this perspective, and the entire country is looking from that perspective, how we can try to convert the adversities into opportunities. So I think there are many such things, Sauri, he has said, and as all Reliancians, I would say these are the things that are more ingrained in our lives and is our guiding force. I would say it's for us on a daily basis.
So from that, taking from that, what are your top learnings to succeed in life? What would you summarize as your top learnings?
I think when I say top learnings, maybe it's not only from the organization. Yes, maybe from organization, maybe from a personal life. Uh, the way I would put it is, whether you associate with anything, whenever you associate with anything, whether it is in organization, whether it is business, whether it is business function, entrepreneurship, or any personal aim that you are working on, I think it is very important that we need to associate with a larger purpose in mind. I mean, unless we are cleared, I think we all as AIM also know that we have also done an onion peeling, right, during our AIM good AIM days. So I think it is very important to align with the larger purpose. And then second is, more importantly, deliver with passion and complete dedication. I think that is critical for the success. One more aspect that I feel, in my opinion, is important is that wherever you stand, it is important to be connected with your roots, from where you started. And we need to always be kind and empathetic, irrespective of where you have reached.
Okay, good. So then that's on a overall learning, but what according to you are the qualities of a leader, which you may have inculcated from your own boss or observed other leaders within the organization?
I think, Sauri, as most of the audience here, I think as an AIM, we have learned a lot of leadership quality. I still remember in AIM also, leader as a visionary, leader as an executor. So many other things that we all have, leader as an innovation leader, many things of that sort we have read, and we have learned there as well. I think what the difference here is that I have learned and I have seen many of those things in action here. So that's the difference that I personally feel. There are many qualities I feel I have learned over the years within the group. Some of those I would say, more importantly, how you can really build a big vision and have a risk taking or develop a risk taking abilities in terms of the project and the businesses that you enter, right? So that's one part of it. One more important thing is to focus on the end goal. You need not just get bogged down by the intermediate milestones. Always keep your focus on the end goal. Um Positive attitude is also an important factor as a leader. How a leader can create a positive aura around, so that the entire team can be taken along, and you can keep everyone focused to the purpose and the objective. And humility, I would say, is also a very, very important factor for a leader. I mean, and this is something that is going to define a leader when it comes to relationships, when it comes to interacting with people. No, those are the important things. And lastly, I would say the learning agility is very important. In fact, I many a time say within Reliance, a leader is a reader or vice versa. So a reader is a leader. Both way it should work, right? So these are the critical things. And unless you keep reading and you keep updating yourself, I don't think you are current ever.
We'll come to the learning part of it later, the education part. But what does a typical day look like for you? How do you prioritize your activities?
Well, I don't think there's a typical day. I mean, for me, every day is totally different. You go with a new set of actions, activities that are planned out. You have a different kind of challenges that you have to work upon. You don't know, maybe you have a situation where you're meeting in meeting. That type of situations also are there. But the way I do it is, one thing I do mainly is to plan the set of activities. That's a daily routine that I have. That I plan set of activities that are required to be completed during the day, or week, or month. So I maintain a complete tracker of rolling actions and projects and meetings, and I keep monitoring it on a daily basis, maybe start of the day, end of the day, and keep updating it. And I think that whether it is physically on writing on a paper, or whether it is maintaining on a Word or any other thing, any other mode. But I think that helps me prioritize my activities, and more importantly, ensuring that any pending actions that might be there are which are required are closed in a timely manner or liquidated in a timely.
Okay. So, how important is work-life balance, and do you really get to achieve it?
Work-life balance. Okay, so I do feel, Sauri, that work-life balance is very important for health and safety, health and wellness of an individual. It is important to many a times cater to the needs of the family. At times to devote to your own self. Many a times you want some time for you to do yoga, meditation, or maybe some self-development. Uh, so all those things are definitely required and important. However, under certain circumstances, one needs to be more focused on certain activities. Um, Maybe a situation like today. I mean, you really need to be available 24 by 7 if need be, right? But at the same time, I feel even if you have peaks and troughs, there are sometimes troughs are available the entire year or during a period. You can set it off or balance it by a vacation or some time off with the family. So work-life balance in a nutshell need not be a daily activity. It can be on and off activity as well. But over a period of time, life will average.
Great, thanks. So, what according to you is the role of luck or destiny versus hard work in achieving success?
Sorry, it is a very loaded question. Let me try to simplify my response. So I think I believe in God, spirituality, luck, destiny, all that you have said. No question about it. गीता में भी बोला है ना कि समय से पहले और भाग्य से ज्यादा ना तो कभी किसी को कुछ मिला है और ना ही मिलेगा, right? So all those things I definitely subscribe to and fully believe. But despite all this, I feel hard work is critical for achieving success. Without hard work, you cannot achieve what is destined to. And other way around, you can also think that if you, with hard work, you can either change or redefine your destinies as well. So in the entire pack, if I have to give more priority, I would say over 90-95% of that would be for the hard work. And I think balance can be left to the luck. God is
Okay,
always there.
thanks. So, when you're recruiting for different levels in the organization, what are some of the key things that you look for in a resume and a profile?
So when I interview the candidates, I mean, this is my perspective. Of course, the candidate, roles are different, positions are different, and these things may change based on the role to role or position to position. So beyond basic technical and functional skills, which is essential for the role, I mean, I would say those are given before even I interview. So those are basic, and those are the basic, I would say, license to operate. That is always there. But I keep equivalent, or I would say more focus on the softer aspects and the leadership qualities that differentiate them. First of all, I never select a candidate. I never select or fill a position by seeing only one candidate. I always want references. Only after that I decide. So some of these qualities that I focus on is how much does the individual align to a larger purpose and the vision, because that is very critical. Without that, otherwise, 3 months down the line, 1 year down the line, if an individual is just here for making money or a position, I think it's not going to be a win-win combination for either of us, right? So that's one part of it. Second, I would also look at his or her decision-making capabilities in the past. What is the track record of decision-making that an individual might have made? Uh, Third, I would say how much does an individual exhibit the ownership mindset? How much does he or she think like a owner when it comes to a particular project? Because once you exhibit that level of ownership, then I think nothing can stop you from executing that project, because that project is not for a particular organization, that project becomes for that individual. So that's something that is very critical. Fourth, I would say, is he or her a team player? Because that is very critical, so that you can maintain the fabric of the organization, the culture of the organization, of a team-based working, so that you don't disturb that aspect. It's very critical. And then lastly, I would say, of course, in new generation, it's very rare to find, but I would definitely say I also look at whether he or she is a steady player or a continuous job hopper. So those aspects are very, very important in my view.
Thanks. So you seem to add different educational degrees every few years. What is the behind? I mean, I know you kind of mentioned about the learning. So can you just elaborate a little bit on the reasons behind this constant quest for education?
I think you've done a sufficient research about me. So you're right. I think in my career, I have kept on studying. So as a strategy, what I have kept right from my engineering days is that I used to study every 4 years. Every 4 years, if one would see, every 4 years I have done something, except once when I allowed it to surpass for 5.5 years. And that time I consciously allowed it to surpass, because I felt I was learning, and the learning was progressing at an accelerated pace within the Reliance University, you can say, or Reliance ecosystem, or Ambani University, whatever you say. But it was accelerating at a very great pace with the boss whom I was associated. Now, as far as learning is concerned, I feel in this VUCA world, it is very critical to keep learning and acquiring skill sets to maintain relevance with the business and the operating environment that we are exposed to today.
Hmm.
Apart from this, I would say, on a whole, and I mean, as a personal thing, I do enjoy, I like it. So as long as I enjoy it, I think I will keep the momentum going.
Thanks. So why did you choose Kellogg after AIM? How were the learnings different in these two esteemed organization institutes? Sorry.
So I think when it comes to AIM, I think all of us know what all benefits we all have drawn from AIM, and there's a lot of learning that we ourselves have got from AIM. So mostly, I don't need to really describe what all it goes into when it comes to AIM. All of us have known it very well. But when I went to Kellogg, what I wanted is I wanted to pursue some sort of executive MBA, which would broaden my horizon and provide opportunities to create the network at the global level as well. So AIM, we studied a lot of Harvard cases, but we still had a network that was more Asia focused, right? At least, of course, in our batch, we did have one Italian and all, but yes, it was still much Asia focused. So that was something that I wanted to really broaden. And more than the rankings, of course, Kellogg program, which I went through, is ranked number one for the last 10 years now. But more than the rankings, I would say I wanted to more focus on the learnings that I would gain from both the professors, mainly from Kellogg as well as the HKUST. So it was a combination of Asia and the Western world, both, and also from the peers like we did and we experienced in AM as well. So it was a different program altogether. The MBA spread over 1.5 year, flying every alternate week to Hong Kong and at times to US, and learning. So it was more like, for me, it was more like an experiential learning. You are learning something and then you are trying to apply it in your organization as well. In a nutshell, I would say Kellogg's learning have supplemented to my AIM's learning, which was a stronger foundation I had.
Great, thanks. So this is for the AIM fraternity. How has AIM helped you in your professional journey?
I think, yeah, 13 years. So 13 years back, I took a call that, I want to pursue AIM. And then when I was thinking that, I was just thinking that I wanted to pursue something crazy in life, pursue a shift from a conventional growth trajectory. 8, 9 years into a particular role, many a times you feel it's like a midlife crisis and you want to do something different. So I think AIM was a great program. All of us know. It helped me create a strong foundation, both for my professional as well as personal journey. We all know when we go through this program, we actually transform without knowing ourselves that we have got transformed, right?
Hmm.
The biggest learning, at least at AIM for me, was how to learn, which has always helped me practice the art of unlearn and learn, and look at things afresh and a little bit differently. Of course, case methodology, Nikhil will say CP. So all those things has always helped us into problem solving, develop our own self, in terms of problem solving capabilities and inculcate critical thinking. So if one more critical facet of learning at AIM that at least I'm sure you all must have, but at least I have seen is it is taught that how leaders need to look beyond profits. That was something that we are all taught there. And during our class, I distinctly remember our own professor used to say that do good when you do well, meaning that you need to do something good after you have done well in the organization. Or as an organization, when you are doing well, you need to do good, right? But that term, at least as a part of my group, we turned it around as during walkabout, the way we were associated with that project for almost 4 months. So the way we turned it around was do good and you will do well. So I think that was an important aspect at that point in time, which I could at least learn there. But that has helped me after coming back to Reliance. It has helped me to quickly align with the organizational objectives here also, and which is also like, you have to look at a larger purpose beyond profits. Many a times, even at Reliance, our leaders say that we should keep focus on our outcomes and impact, and profit is just a byproduct.
Thanks. I have lots of questions, but I will stop here with just one question last question before I open it up to the audience. Any personal entrepreneurial aspirations?
No, I think, Asauri, currently I am personally feeling that as if I am operating as an entrepreneur, or so to say, or maybe you can say entrepreneur in residence or entrepreneur in Reliance within Reliance itself, right? So I think I am working on various projects which have a higher purpose and vision, which will serve India, Indians, and humanity at large. I think getting associated or getting an opportunity to associate with such projects are unique. So I am enjoying it a lot, and I think I will plan. At least I plan to continue to fulfill all the entrepreneurial aspirations that you might be thinking through this existing journey. But one more point that I want to make here is, I don't know whether it is an impact or the influence from a father working in Reliance or what, but many a times I keep hearing from my daughter that Papa, I am going to become a businesswoman and I am going to become an entrepreneur. So, so if at all, her entrepreneurial aspirations materialize, then I would say that maybe I can enter her or all my learnings all through within Reliance and maybe in AIM, maybe in Kellogg, all put together. I think it may be put to good use by mentoring her.
Great. So we already have received a lot of questions, Nilesh. So Nikhil, you want people to ask, or shall I read out the questions?
You read out the question first.
Okay. All right. So the first question we have from Mr. Gailey. Nilesh, how does your chairman manage such a diversified and large enterprise? What is his management style? How does he balance his time and different roles?
I think we all know he's very hardworking. He reads a lot. Every single, I would say, emails are responded within 24 hours. Whatever goes to him. So, in terms of time, I think he has a focused time when he wants to read, when he wants to uh, go through the mails, when he has meetings. I think it's very different to explain how he's totally a different kind of personality and person, and that's rightly so why he's there, right? So at least I try to learn a lot. Okay, how do we bring that kind of focus mindset in your life so that you can be balanced and you can work on every single facet and every single aspect.
Okay, so the next question, and it's up to you whether given the market sensitivities, we leave it to your prudence whether you'd like to answer this question. But the question we have from Mukesh Gupta, considering that the government is seriously considering giving banking licenses to large corporates, do you think Reliance would be considering floating a bank?
No, I think what we'll do is we will maintain this decorum here is like mainly to share the learnings rather than being a spokesperson of Reliance or anything, and which I'm not, right. So I think what we'll do is we'll continue to maintain that decorum in terms of sharing the learnings, right. And these are all forward-looking statements, which I think it's not good to make.
All right. So Jinesh has asked, let me understand this one, risks during generational transition or successional planning risks. Okay, I think the question must be how does Reliance handle the risks during generational transition or succession planning risks? Given Reliance investors face similar risk in 2002 to 2005 during first generational transition. So I guess they're talking about succession planning in short, Nilesh, if I have to kind of summarize that question.
I think, sorry, I think these are all sensitive matters, right? Sensitive organizational issues that I think better not to be discussed.
All right. So the next question is from Vasu. How is failure viewed in Reliance?
So I think, at least based on my experience and my perspective, like I said earlier in one of the responses as well, we learn from every failures, and once it is once you have experienced it, I think as an organization all across we percolate those learnings. There is a process by which every single individual, at least at the highest level, are aware so that it gets percolated across the organization. And we don't, at least I mean, we don't shy away from facing failures, but we don't want to have those failures, repeated failures, or experience those repeated failures again.
Okay. So Blaze has asked this question: has the fact that Reliance does not enjoy the same halo as the Tata brand been analyzed, or this is not correctly
Sorry, I
portrayed?
didn't get you. Sorry, I didn't get you.
His question is, has the fact that Reliance does not enjoy the same halo, it's not put in the same bracket as a great organization, the Tata brand, been analyzed within the organization, or is this not correctly portrayed? As in the layperson doesn't understand that, so Has Reliance kind of analyzed why it's not the same quality, or the Tata brand is looked at?
No, I don't know. Maybe I think at least I feel maybe if that is a feeling, probably uh, we are not doing a good job in communicating, right?
Okay. All right. Romi's question is, what's the size of the chairman's office and how is it structured?
So I think we have a very lean organization at the chairman's office level. So we have two different parts within that. One is the secretariat, and other is the executive office. And within the executive office, we do have a team who is continuously focusing on new opportunities and analysis and various other matters to support the organization and chairman on monitoring various projects.
Okay. Uh, just a minute. Huh? Okay. So we have Mohandas from Bangalore who asks, you said at one time, company within company. Can you elaborate? Is it like corporate entrepreneurship? I think it came on from your startup, and we were talking about investing in
Yeah, yeah,
startups.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So when I say company within company, meaning you are invested in a company, and that company, rather than getting totally integrated and acquiring and just absorbing and then integrating totally with the organization and making them employees, we maintain the entrepreneurial fabric of that particular company or that startup, and we just mentor them. We provide or fund the plans or the business plan. We provide them access to market. We provide them the mentorship to scale the business, and they continue to operate as their own company.
Okay.
Most of the businesses, most of the startups.
You had mentioned the importance of planning. How does your team also adjust to agile environments and unexpected changes we have to adapt to these days? This is from Chetan Kamath.
Sorry, Asauri, your voice is getting.
You had mentioned the importance of planning. How does your team also adjust to agile environments and unexpected changes we have to adapt to these days?
Yeah, I think like yes, I agree. I think as far as the planning is concerned, I mentioned it is very important because we really take every single aspect or maybe think of what could happen in future into consideration and try to plan ahead of those situations. And when I say we need to be agile, you know even in a planning stage you might have planned certain set of activities as a mitigation for certain type of risk, but imagine if that risk has come to you in a different form and shape or a different manner, or maybe a particular risk has come which was never thought through early on.
Hmm.
So I think even at that stage, whether you are in an execution phase or you are in a business management phase, or the business is operational and you are in a particular phase of that life cycle of a business, I think you can look at those aspects afresh and see what went into planning, what was wrong, maybe what needs to be done, and then maybe you can chart out a new action and then immediately respond to the need of the hour.
Okay, so both Ambani brothers had equal wealth and were highly educated. What did the brothers do differently, or what was the difference in their thinking or management ways that one succeeded and the other crashed?
I don't know. I really don't know because I don't have the perspective of different groups. So I think I'll not. I think it's better not to answer this question.
So, promoters ask, continuing on Nikhil's question, given that the conglomerate is quite diversified, how do you ensure that all arms of the organization pull in the same direction and reflect the values of the chairman's office?
Sorry, your voice is getting.
So the question is, given that the conglomerate is quite diversified, how do you ensure that all the arms of the organization pull in the same direction and reflect the values of the chairman's office?
And reflect the.
and reflect the values of the chairman's office, essentially saying that you're so diversified, but how do you all kind of go in the same direction and follow the same objective and goal?
Right. No, I think like I mentioned earlier also, right, that there are many things that flow from the basic principles that have been taught through early on, right?
Hmm.
When I talked about Sridharubhai Ambani's principle, then certain things are aligned, certain things are possible and practically implemented and happening on ground, mainly because of the way the business leaders interact and meet on the weekly basis, so that all are aligned to the values of the chairman's office, or I would say the chairman.
Okay. Sumit, I'm going to field this question, but I'm pretty sure Nilesh will not answer it, but I'll still do it since you've asked this. He wants to know your target on the Reliance stock. So I'll continue to the next question. How does Reliance manage to attract the best talent? I have personally worked with some of the best chemical process engineers there. These people were globally respected and had been with the organization for a very long time. I think we've kind of covered that, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I fairly covered it, because many a times the kind of the scale and the projects that the company offers, I think it is unique. Many a times, um, uh, I would say many a times it's very rare opportunity which individuals perceive as. So that itself creates a lot of pull as far as the talent market is concerned. Beyond pull, I think when we also scout for talent, I think there are ways and means and by which HR spots the talent, and we do map candidates from the target organizations, and if we feel that yeah they are good, they are here.
All right. Any more questions?
Yeah, so there would be more questions, but it is very difficult to break the Rahul Dravid, the walls impress akin to Nilesh Modi in this case. So, and I personally agree that some questions are more juicy gossip and more interesting for the tabloids. But having said that, thank you, Nilesh, for taking out your time. And it was a very enthralling discussion, and you answered questions very nicely. You explained to us your perspective as well as the perspective of the organization. And somebody just commented saying that if Nilesh Modi has been in the chairman's office for 4 years, he's a super survivor. So now this is that's what somebody said, but that's jokes apart. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Asa, for the excellent moderation.